Be Your Best You, the Passionate to Purpose podcast with David Delaney. Good morning and welcome to yet another episode of Be Your Best You, the Passion into Purpose podcast. This morning we talked to Charles James Walker. Charlie is a musician from Longford, a unique talent. His free spirit has taken him across the world, travelling to the most wonderful places and experiencing the most incredible things. It's this life experience which translates into his music, and he creates songs that remain in your mind, each with its own story and each with its own beautiful life. A deep soul, his music transcends the boundaries of the traditional singer-songwriter, and his impassioned lyrics touch on the most sensitive subjects of life, love and everything. And it's this what we talked to Charlie about this morning. So music can bring us all over the world, and this morning's guest is certainly a prime example of that, how music has taken us around the world. Charlie Walker, known as Charles James Walker on your singles and your albums. You're joining us this morning from New Zealand. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning. Good evening, David.
Good evening. Good evening to you. Yeah.
Good evening. I have my tea time bed, my bedtime cup of tea is sitting there beside me.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm trying to wake up over here on the other side of the globe. Charlie, tell us a little bit. Musician, okay? We know you as a musician. We know you as a fundraiser. You've raised absolutely bucket loads of money for different charities, again, around the globe in the years that you've been fundraising. Just tell us, give me a little bit of background of the journey that you've been on.
So a small question in there, yeah?
Yep, no bother. We like to start the small ones.
I guess the most recent journey that I've been on, the last 5 years since 2015, was one of self-discovery. I had spent up to that point, I had spent the entirety of my adult life working in and around the third sector, raising money for charities and working in offices, and not realizing how heavily addicted I was to success and to raising money and to lots of the different things that went into that. And I just wasn't very happy. Okay. So in 2015, at a real crush point, I guess I was looking around me going, like, I'm going to die here if I don't make a move soon. So I got up and started traveling. I decided to take the guitar, give up the safe job, leave the relationship I was in, and jump into the unknown. Go out and see what happiness was like in different parts of the world. How people understood happiness, what spirituality was, if it existed. That was 20.
What is happiness to you? What's your definition of happiness, Charlie?
That's taken so many different turns over the last while, man. The definition of happiness for me is like to be content.
Okay.
I used to think for many years happiness was an excitement feeling. Okay. That I found at a very early age with drugs and with alcohol, and later through flings and with different people, and promotion will give you that excitement as well. But that's not real happiness. It's not at all. It comes and it's a buzz, but it doesn't last. In fact, it just creates another hole. Like it's never going to be always attainable. To truly be happy is to be content with where you are. And I think the path to that for me is a daily capturing and a daily remembrance, and having my gratitude notebook every morning. Gratitude is where true happiness is, I believe, for me at this point. Could change tomorrow, I don't know. But
tell me, Charlie, a little bit about the songwriting process. I mean, a lot of like people who would have heard your songs over the years, the different EPs and albums that you would have released. Tell me a little bit about the songwriting process, and has that been cathartic? Has it been something that brought you to different places maybe that you didn't want to go? Like songwriters are, they say it releases a lot, good and bad. For you, how is the songwriting process, and what do you get out of it?
Oh man, I get everything out of it. Writing songs for me, that was the only form of expression of the actual true self for many, many years. I could, like, there have been times where I've written songs over the years And I stepped back and I wouldn't even understand what I had written at the time. It took me a little while to understand and to fully play out exactly what the words actually meant. And that's not to say that it was just words thrown at a page. It was like my inner conscious was speaking and it came out and it went there into words. And then when I sat back, I could actually feel, okay, yeah, that is why you don't know how to love. That is why you were afraid to give yourself in that situation. That is how you actually felt about that decision that girl had to make at that point. But you couldn't talk about it. And I could never talk about these things when they were happening. But give me a pen and a guitar, and it can pour straight out. And it's almost like when I'm singing them, I can assume that person, be that person when a mic is there, but it's a lot harder in sobriety to sit locked eyes with somebody and say these things honestly. I find it hard to do that without self-seeking or other things. It's, yeah, I guess Van Gogh had his paintbrush. And I know Van Gogh might be as mad as him, but I certainly felt like that was my ability to express came through the six strings and the guitar, right?
And do you have a particular, we'll talk, you mentioned sobriety and addiction there, we'll talk about that in a second, but is there a particular song lyric that resonates with you, that you kind of go, this is kind of my mantra, this is something I live by, or something that you remember, and that's why you do what you do? Is there a particular lyric from any song?
My songs, I mean, are from songs that I've heard.
From your own songs.
There's one in Get In. If the Reaper got a problem with me. That was a bit of a realization that death was haunting me. That I was constantly running from and like inexplicably running towards death. And I was in this dance with it all the time that I just wasn't willing to let go of at that time. I hadn't figured out how to let that go. I was just pretty certain I was going to die, I guess. And that was one of the turning points. That was pardon me. That was the beginning of starting to examine stuff from a different angle. Like examine getting out of that cycle, not to get too much into the analogies of it, but I was able to observe what was happening a little bit better and start to take a more reasoned approach to living.
There's another lyric in Get In. I was listening to it, and I've been through all the hospital, the pills, and all the fucking therapy. Tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind, just where that, from an examiner point of view.
No worries. I married a therapist, and she didn't have a chance. She didn't have a hope. I spent years in therapy where I was the king of manipulation. I would sit in therapy for hours and paying the person, and all I was doing was trying to get them to feel sorry for me. Not really, truly, honestly putting my finger on or even going towards the problem. I knew what it was that I had to say in order to be accepted, like the chameleon in all circumstances, but never honest, never truly analyzing why or how I felt the way I felt. And so I felt like at the time I was doing it and I was putting myself into the right places. I was taking the drugs that they were giving to me, and I had been to rehab a few times and hospitals, and none of it worked. The cloud kept coming back, and I just felt like it was haunting me. And I didn't think there are times like I can understand. Fuck, I lived it. Like that's when it gets that dark. I understand why people want to check out, because you honestly can't see a way that it's going to fix, that it's going to get better. You can't. You feel like you've tried everything, and you feel like you've tried everything as hard and as positively as you can. Or I feel that, at least. Reality, hindsight, 2020, and all that. Like I wasn't being honest with myself. I wasn't. I hadn't looked at the actual route, and I wasn't willing to at that time. But yeah, I started taking overdoses, man, when I was 16. I started seeing therapists when I was 14. And with the brief bracket of a few years in my 20s where I was just drunk and off my head and pretty good at laughing, I guess. That was a more or less continuous thing right through. And I'm still doing therapy now. Getting places now though.
Excellent. Charlie, what changed? What changed for you? What was the moment? I hit a rock bottom or I hit this and that. What was your pivotal moment that you said, okay, this is it. I need to do something. And what was that moment for you?
For the beginning of for there was a period. Are you ready for a dark story?
If you feel you want to go there, Charles, there's no hassle.
I have no issue with it at all, man. Yeah, I guess I knew things were going in the wrong direction when I was doing like a lot of drugs, and working in the office at the same time. And there was a period where I went into the office one morning and I'd stepped over a couple of homeless people on the way in. And I was in and I was chatting with my boss while making a coffee, and he was saying something to me, and in my head I was kind of going, I got more in common with the lads I just stepped over than I do with you. And I was saying that in one thought, but in the other thought I was mortally afraid of taking the coffee out of the pot, because I knew when I took it out it was going to shake. And true to form, I took it out and I couldn't get a full spoon of coffee into the cup. And my boss was standing there looking at me. I was running the biggest department in that company at the time, with a lot of people working with me and looking to me for influence and direction. And yeah, I guess it was kind of clear around that time that this is not working anymore. I'm not getting away with it anymore. I was always kind of acting up. I knew that there was something wrong inside myself. I knew that long before, but I had a decent facade up so nobody else could know. And it was probably around that time that it was becoming a little bit more obvious than I wanted it to the people around me, that I guess the cracks were starting to show. And that's where I started to entertain that's when I first started to go in and try to manipulate therapists and pay them for the pleasure. It wasn't an honest attempt at fixing, but it started.
And when therapy wasn't working in your in your situation, did things plateau? Did they descend? Like what was the path that you kind of found yourself on at that point? Did you feel safe in therapy with yourself, or you were manipulating, as you said, the situation? Did you feel safe doing that, or were you afraid of what was coming along, or how where did that situation bring you?
Because it was over such a long space of time, David. It was like I was always convinced when I was doing something that I was doing the right thing, and I was always convinced when I was engaged in it that I was doing it as well as I could. And that will have been true, I guess, for the moments that were passing at that time. The fears were going for, like, I was more afraid of like getting this project done at work, getting that project done at work, getting this person met at the weekend. Am I going to get this? Like, the life was moment to moment. And the anxiety was almost constant. The sleep was almost non-existent. So it was like one drug to be conscious, be awake and functioning, and another drug to try and be asleep, and another drug to try and induce happiness, another one to try and induce sadness, the alcohol. And in the end, there was a drug for each emotion, and that's how, like, I trying to control everything with my militant mind. I was just like it was a slow descent. It looked fast at times, but then it would slow right down. I could go 3 or 4 months of being sober and going to the gym 10 times a week and just eating like vegetables, whatever, and looked like the model human to the outside world. But then that was just saving time up to break down again.
These drugs, they're not scripted drugs, are they? Were they prescribed drugs to bring you up, to bring you down, to calm this? Were they
prescribed by me, Dr. Charlie? Yeah, because I knew better. I knew better than any doctor around. Just what doctors are fools.
Charlie, yeah, how much will you spend in a week on this lifestyle?
There were times it could be a couple of grand a week. There were times that went up there. I usually, like, yeah, all the wages and some.
Okay. So how long did you do this for?
Years. Yeah, that went on with that kind of a cycle, I guess, for about 3 or 4 years before I quit, before I left. Probably, yeah, somewhere around 2011, 2012 is where I started to realize the problem was the cracks were showing, and then the explosion in 2015.
Okay. You say you're addicted to success. Okay, or were addicted to success. Did that replace when you started, I suppose, getting heavy into the music career? Were you replacing addiction with addiction?
Yeah.
Were you finding the next best thing to actually, okay, I'm going to do this? And like, did you realize the extent of your addiction when you were in it? That's probably a weird question to ask.
No,
Okay.
not at all.
So at what?
Sorry, go on.
Just at what point did you realize I'm in trouble? When did you say to yourself, you as Charlie, not as Dr. Charlie, not as convincing the therapist Charlie? When did your true self, as you referred to earlier, when did you say, man, you need to get yourself out of this?
In 2015, I had met a friend that I hadn't seen in 10 years, a girl from America that I used to go out with when I was much younger. And I took her for a drive to show around Ireland. And one of the first things that she said to me was, "Where's your smile? Like, your smile is gone." And that meant a lot more than just me showing the teeth. Like, I knew what she meant. We got to talking over the next few days, and I was telling, like, I guess I started speaking from the heart and telling her exactly what had been happening in the weeks and months leading up to that. And I'd been getting pains in my chest over the course of last summer, and they were getting worse. And as they get worse, I go off and buy more coke and do more coke. And then they get worse, and then I take a lot of Valium and put myself to sleep. And it was quite real. It became quite real that I was just about to die, that was coming, that I'd had as many overdoses as the universe was going to afford me, and that all of the things that I was doing, like I was staying to keep the job going, to keep the facade going, to keep the relationship going, and to do this for this person, this for this person, this for this person. And ultimately, I was actually facing mortality. That it was just very real, that you'll be dead in the next couple of weeks if this continues. So I went back and sat down on the end of the couch with my then wife and said, "I can't do this anymore." She said, "I don't know." And I booked a flight, and 4 days later, I was out of the country. I closed the company and left. And in my head, I guess at that time, man, I thought I was going to die then. Like, I didn't think I was going to get very far. I still thought, okay, I'll see some of the world before I die, but it's just going to happen. And again, some faith in the universe. It took me in the wrong direction first. I went over to Canada, and that wasn't great. Barbados certainly wasn't any better. But a couple of months after, I went to India, and that's when some light bulbs started to go off. And started.
What kind of how did you feel when you just said, okay, I'm packing this up? In that period of time, you said, okay, I'm leaving the country and getting out. Did you go on your own? Did you leave just up and left? And how did that feel to just say, okay, I'm out here? Was it scary? Like, how did that feel to you?
Of course, it was. Well, it was. I guess on one hand, it was like one of the biggest fears, I guess, at that point in my life would have been letting people down, or being seen as being a failure, as being seen as not being this supreme being that I thought I was presenting to the world, and people actually realizing that it was all a fake. That would have been one of my biggest fears that I was facing at that point. And I'm not going to say that it was completely dwarfed, but it did feel very much like I was going to die and nothing really mattered anymore. So it was almost like when I got out, like there were a couple of people that I contacted, like my son's mom and some of the people that I was working with, some of the people that I had worked with, and I was just very honest with them. I said, look, this is what I've been doing for the last couple of months. I honestly think I'm going to die very soon. I need to just get the hell away from here. And they were like every one of them, even though I had been horrible with them, were just totally supportive. They're like, get the hell out, run. So yeah, it was scary, but not so much. I think it would have been much more scary to stay.
Oh. There's something in the 12-step program that you make reparations with people, and you do, I think it's step 9 or step 11, I'm not sure which one, but you were doing that when you didn't even know, I suppose, that was, or had you been through, I mean, you mentioned a few times that you'd been in therapy and stuff like that. Did you know what you were doing when you were, okay, I was horrible to you, but I'm telling you what's going on? Was there a subconscious having been through 12 steps before? Or was there just some divine intervention that this is the path that, you're getting ahead of yourself and you're going to do this? And what was that like?
It's funny that you mention it. I'm actually just on the 9th step now, which is making amends. And I actually just this evening read over it. I've just finished the 8th step and I've made my list, and I've read over it this evening with my sponsors. So yeah, it's a common thing for a lot of us going into recovery, that the first, like we all read the steps, like it's very easy to read them, and you look and you go, oh yeah, make amends. And for me, I wanted to make amends immediately because I wanted people to love me again. Love me. I'm not that bad. Please, just be nice to me. And there's a reason why it's step 9 and not step 1. Is because there's no point in going and begging for forgiveness. You're not even supposed to beg for forgiveness, make amends. You need to have had some kind of a solution present itself in your head that you can grasp and work with before bothering to go and make amends with anybody. Otherwise, you're just another groveling fool with a hangover. So, like, I have on occasion in the past tried to make amends where I shouldn't have, and I've only realized recently, just as in the last few weeks, that I shouldn't have, that I should have left it. But with those people at that particular time, mate, that was actually just a little bit more, here, look, I'm sorry I let you down. And one of the people is, yeah, I'm going to be writing those letters at the weekend. Okay. I had seen the 12 steps. I have looked at them. I honestly didn't think it was for me at all. Looking at it in therapy, I thought, what a pack of nonsense. They're all in a cult. They're talking about God. What? Get out.
And had you done 12 steps before, or is this the first time you have done a program that actually, I want to talk to you about that in more detail, because it's structure, and from listening to your journey and knowing you, structure is probably something that you might have struggled with in the past, and you have to do these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all the way up, and back again if need be. How do you find being accountable to someone in a program that you can't quite grasp, because you're saying about the golly stuff, and it's, people say, is it God, is it group of drunks, is it great outdoors, what is a higher power? Because there's all these things that go on. So there's something in there with you right now. So how are you finding that? How are you finding, is that, I suppose I'm afraid to ask you, is there a little bit of Charlie who manipulated the therapist? Is there a little bit of Charlie who's now manipulating the steps? Or are you saying, I'm actually doing this, I am going to be accountable, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this, and that's it? I know, one day at a time. You said that, it's life is moment to moment. How are you coping with the 12 steps?
It's taking a long time, man. A long time. And like the first one, all right. When I looked at the first one, I'm like, fuck off. I'm powerless. I'm powerless over nothing. I'm Charlie Walker, all powerful, all caring. I can do anything. I came from nothing, the rose in the concrete. How can I be powerless over something as simple as I just don't drink? Watch. I couldn't get the first step, man. And certainly when it started going into the God stuff, like, this is the lad who organised protests against the church, like, and grew up in Catholic Ireland. Like God for me was a BG in the sky. How the hell am I ever going to get my head around a program that has that at the centre? It took India. It took traveling. It took it took being away from constantly feeding my addictions. And when I say that, man, I don't just mean taking a drink every 20 minutes or taking a line of coke or whatever. Feeding my addictions was with the thoughts that went with it as well. It took me stopping in nature, walking caminos for a few years. Climbing mountains in India, sitting with shamans, sitting with yogis, learning yoga, before I started to accept that I wasn't the god of the universe and that it didn't all just happen by accident, in my opinion. That there's as much of a chance that there is some intelligence into why that tree branch is bent that way and not that way, as it's as much intelligence as it is accident. And I can choose it to be intelligence. And if I choose that, then maybe there's a plan for everything. And maybe there's a reason why that mantra, everything always works out in the end, because it does. And there is somebody else running it. And when I started getting my head around that and started allowing spirituality, and I'm not saying, man, I didn't just wake up one morning and go, hey, God. It was a process. It took a long time. But now I do accept that I'm not in control of everything anymore. I do give stuff up now. Like whenever I start to get stressed, I'm like, all right, okay. Serenity. God grant me the ability to accept things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. And I'll find some serenity in that when I say it to myself. And to come to your point, if I believe in a God, in a higher power, in a universe that's bigger than myself, I can't tell fucking lies anymore, can I? Who am I lying to? Ultimately, I'm lying to myself. And I know, and I catch myself now when I'm saying, like, if I'm saying something that's really emotionally charged, I've got an almost immediate off switch where I'll need to, okay, hang on, I need to sit down for a second and ponder that and see where that thought or that emotion is coming from. Sure. I'm not a perfect being yet. Am I doing the acts properly? I don't know that anybody is, but doing them to the best of your ability and doing them thoroughly that's the important part.
What would you say to Charlie, just someone who's out there at the moment and who would be struggling, listening to this and going, I suppose, like yourself, saying, 12 steps, God. What would you say to someone who is and wants to make that step but just feels that they can't?
It's all about action, all of it. And it's hard to explain this to myself, but when the issue is how you're thinking, you probably can't think yourself out of it. The best chance you have of getting your thinking right is getting around other people who have thinking that's a bit wary as well, or a bit wary, because they can spot it in you and you can spot it in them and you can help each other. And it's a process of action, or it's a program of actions, as I say, going to the meetings and looking for similarities rather than differences. I deliberately put on my best suit to go into an AA meeting. Like, even if I wasn't wearing a suit to the office that day, just because there was other people in there that didn't have jobs and I could go, see, I'm not him. That kind of bullshit wasn't doing me any favors. But that fella's story, albeit from a mouth with no teeth, and he's using language that I would never use, but like, bottom line, he was waking up in the morning, fucking 3 o'clock. The off licenses were closed, and he was rattling and shaking, getting sick in the bathroom, same as I was. That's a similarity that I can identify with. And if I looked at that and link on to that, I might hear the bigger message that he's sharing.
How do you find it, Charlie? Because just on the music side of things, you're gigging a few times a week. So how do you find that in a situation? I doubt from talking to you, you're gigging in convents. So how do you find being in a situation where there are substances that you have that have been abused by you and you have abused? How do you find yourself in those situations?
Again, mate, that's taken a long time. That didn't happen overnight, and I wouldn't advise anybody who is endeavoring a path of like abstinence, or like just not trying to drink less, going to a pub. If you go to a hairdresser's often enough, you're going to get a haircut. We're not evidence of that, obviously, but That is the
Not
truth.
at the moment. We're in lockdown, Charlie. We're in lockdown over here.
But yeah, for me, it's like I've been quite lucky, especially in the group that I've got here in Auckland. One of the lads that runs one of the nights that I do frequently is in the program. Which I didn't realize until I just got on the scene, and turns out then we have other friends who are on the scene. And I've got like there's a table like if you're going to play like a lot of the gigs that I play, there are not a lot of people with a lot of money, so not a lot of people going in and drinking. They're going in to drink water or tea. And there's always going to be a table that's not drinking. There's never anybody drinking at my table, ever.
Is it harder? Okay, you're a good Irish Catholic boy. Okay, growing up in good Catholic Ireland. Is it harder for you in Ireland than it is in Auckland in your situation? Is there a different culture when it comes to alcohol addiction, drug abuse? Like, is there what are the cultural differences? Are there any?
Not really, man. Not really. Alcohol has its grip on the whole world, and nor has it any different. I thought that when I went traveling, it was going to be easier because other cultures wouldn't drink as much as us. But then I have an Irish accent. Walking into a bar in Thailand, people expect you to be drunk, so you're just living up to the stereotype of drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning. Nobody expects you to do anything different, something stupid. So no, that was. I thought it was going to be like one of the reasons why I left. Is that true for a sec? Yeah, I felt a deep sense of shame for some of the things that I'd done. Particularly, there's no need to go into them, but in particular over the last few years. And I thought fresh start. Fresh start is going to be easier. It's going to be better. Now that I'm this far through the steps and kind of want to be back close to my friends, family, so I can like talk to them and explain to them how I feel about it. I guess in truth, it doesn't really matter where you are. And the problem is in here. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. Alcohol is going to be available, even if it's. There's a good story, Dave. I went to India, picked a city deliberately, the only city that I could see in India that didn't sell alcohol. Alcohol was illegal. You couldn't buy it. I got off the plane in Delhi, got a 6-hour taxi up, went into a restaurant, jet lagged and whatever. Ordered my food. The dude come over and goes, "Do you want apple juice?" I'm like, "Oh, apple juice? I don't want apple juice. Go away." So, "You want apple juice?" And I'm like, "No." And he came back and asked again, and I'm like, "Right, grand, apple juice, it's fine." And he came over to me with a can of Kingfisher beer wrapped up in newspaper. He says, "Apple juice." I took it and drank it, but yeah, if you want it, you'll find it, or it'll find you.
And how has it? Okay, you're in Auckland now. So do you plan on coming back? And what's the plan for the next 6 months, a year? Like, are you coming back? Or are you going to stay there? What's happening?
I don't know. Do you recommend I go back?
It's been a very interesting 18 months in Ireland. Interesting enough, there's a discussion at the moment about minimum pricing on alcohol. And people are saying, okay, it's not going to make a difference. It's another form of tax, and they're going to add. So like it's going to be X amount on a can or a beer. And people are saying you're not going to drink €2 worth of alcohol. You're going to drink 2 cans. That's how people measure. What are your thoughts? Minimum pricing? What's your thought on minimum pricing in Ireland? What's your thought on the whole situation on dealing with alcohol in Ireland?
I think that there isn't even an appetite to deal with alcohol in Ireland or any other country. I think it's absolutely. I think it's pandering to say that they're trying. If they were really trying, they would go the same route as cigarettes. And I don't think they're even trying cigarettes as hard as they should. It kills. If you really want to do it, do it. But we're going to tax it to the hilt, and it can't be advertised anywhere. It's not going to be on while you're. What the hell has Guinness got to do with playing rugby? At all? Should all the lads in the pitch be pissed? Should you drink Guinness and hit people with hurls? And this is coming I've no problem with people drinking, but why is it being advertised to kids? Why is it being advertised to teenagers?
We've just lost our Diageo. We've just lost the Diageo sponsorship there. Thanks, Charlie. It's okay.
I don't know. For me, it needs to stop advertising it. And tax it higher. It's the most dangerous drug in the world.
And the most accessible.
The most accessible, by far. it's the fact that our kids are turned into it at such a young age, and it's the answer to their problems, to the problems that we're not fixing. I think that's like we're really kicking the can down the road. If you want to challenge it, challenge it. Like, you don't have to make it illegal, but
Talk about it.
why is it the focal? Why is it the focal point of everything that we do? You know, Ireland's so much better than that as well. Like, we're not just a country of drinkers. We're the saints and scholars once. Remember, before we were colonized, we were a country that like enjoyed literature and enjoyed growth, and it like showing the world how great we are. Not just that we're drunk and happy and write songs and fight. Like, that's, I don't think that that's who we are at our core. I think that's who we've become. And we have the ability to change that.
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah, and it's just the small things that make a difference. I mean, these are all cliches, I know. You know, what one lesson, Charlie? What one lesson has it taken you the longest to learn?
That I'm not right. I'm not right. I'm not right about everything. That I have ridiculous trust issues. Do you know what I learned today? That I tried. Like, I learned today when I was sitting in my car. I had the lights on auto. No, I didn't. I had the lights on full, and I was like, "There's an auto thing there." I put it back on, and then I put it back again. And I was like, "I don't trust it, whether or not it's on." And then I didn't trust the window wipers, and realized I didn't trust the window wipers. And I don't trust Google Maps. And I don't trust anything or anything. I don't really trust stuff that other people have done, unless I've done it myself. And that's a part of my control issues, and like that's unraveling itself to me on a daily basis. So yeah, learning where I'm wrong and probably admitting it is still, that's going to be a daily occurrence forever, I think.
Yeah. What do the next 6 months look like to you?
Really rosy. Yeah, not to sicken anybody back at home, but I've got a small animal rescue here, with 3 cows we've rescued from farms, 2 lambs with 2 dogs. We've a couple of acres here out in the countryside. I'm gigging 3 or 4 nights a week, and in Auckland. I'm going gigging down South Island next month. Yeah, I have more than enough money to keep myself going. Not that I'm rich, I'm getting enough money to live happily at the minute. And yeah, that's for the next 5-6 months, and then who knows for next year. But I don't see myself running back home. I think I'm a child of the world. You can cut that, actually.
I think that sounds good. It's good. Charlie, I'm going to leave you to have the last word, the last bit of control. Have the last word. What do you want to say?
Thanks for listening. I hope I don't sound too self-obsessed. I guess we did talk a lot about addiction here, and about help. And I guess there is actually help. It does actually work. Like, the things that are being said in those rooms, those meetings, it does create a happiness. So yeah, if you're thinking about doing it, do it.
Charlie Walker, thank you very, very, very much for joining us this morning.
Cheers, brother.
And that's it for another week. Thanks for joining us this morning, and do join us next time on Be Your Best You. Have a good week.